3 days passed. The starward horizon sat in neutral space, like a small fish between two oceans, waiting. An HFY fleet was coming to collect their princess. Earth Command had sent Ambassador Nora Beckett to manage the situation. Captain Hines had not slept much. Nobody had. Except LeHFY. LeHFY was healing fast. The HFY body repaired itself much quicker than a human one. And by the second day she was walking. By the third day, she was exploring. Danny had been assigned as her guide, mostly because he was the only person on the ship she did not glare at. He did not mind. He liked her company, even though she spent most of it looking at everything with the expression of someone inspecting a very interesting insect. He took her to the mess hall first. She stood in the doorway and watched the crew eating together, laughing, talking with their mouths full, bumping elbows. "They eat together?" she asked. "Every meal," Danny said. "In the Dominion, meals are taken alone unless there is a formal occasion." "That sounds lonely," Danny said. LeHFY did not answer, but she kept watching the crew like she was trying to solve a puzzle. He showed her the small hydroponics garden that the crew maintained near the lower decks. It was nothing impressive. A few trays of herbs, some tomatoes, a struggling little lemon tree that Kale had named Gerald. But LeHFY touched the leaves of the basil plant with something close to wonder. "You grow living things on a ship of metal," she said. "We grow living things everywhere," Danny said. "It is kind of our thing." He told her about Briar's Reach, about the red soil that got into everything, about the storms that rolled across the plains in the summer, lightning cracking the sky open like an egg. About his mother's cooking, the way her kitchen always smelled like bread and something sweet. About sitting on the porch at night and watching the stars come out one by one. LeHFY listened. She listened more carefully than anyone had ever listened to Danny in his life. And slowly, in pieces, she began to talk too. She told him about Aethranor, about the crystal cities that rose so high they touched the clouds, about the violet oceans that sang when the three suns set, about the palace where she grew up, beautiful and cold, where every word she spoke was measured and every step she took was watched. She told him about her father, the High Sovereign, who was ancient and powerful and loved his empire more than his children. She told him about her sisters, who had all married for duty and never complained. And then she told him the truth. "My transport was not attacked by pirates," she said. "They were sitting in the hydroponics garden, surrounded by the quiet hum of grow lights. It was sabotaged." Danny went still. "By who?" "By someone working for Thalric Voss." She said the name like it was poison. "He is a war commander, one of the most powerful men in the Dominion, and my father has promised him my hand in marriage." Danny felt something twist in his chest. "Do you want to marry him?" "I would rather walk into a star," LeHFY said flatly. "Thalric is cruel. He does not want me. He wants the power that comes with marrying a daughter of the sovereign. And when I told my father I would refuse, when I tried to leave, my transport was attacked. My guards were killed. I was meant to die, and humans were meant to be blamed. Thalric would get his war and his power, and I would be gone." Danny's hands tightened into fists. He was not a violent man. But something about the calm way she described her own planned murder made him want to break something. "That is not going to happen," he said. "You cannot stop it," she said. "You are one human on a small ship." "Maybe," Danny said, "but where I come from, nobody gets to decide your life for you. Nobody. That is not how it works." LeHFY looked at him with those pale moon eyes, and he saw something shift in them. Something like the first crack in a frozen lake. In the Dominion, duty to bloodline is everything. Your life belongs to your family, your house, your sovereign. The idea that one person's choice matters more than all of that? She trailed off. "It is not just an idea," Danny said. "It is the truth." Ambassador Beckett arrived the next morning. She was a small woman with dark skin and sharp eyes, who moved through a room like she already knew every secret in it. She understood the danger immediately. Vaylith's accusation against Thalric could shatter the Dominion's internal politics, but keeping her on a human ship could be seen as an act of war. And then the Athrani fleet arrived. 12 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel and surrounded the starward horizon like wolves circling a rabbit. At the head of the fleet was Thalric Voss himself. He came aboard for a meeting. He was tall, even for an Athrani, with sharp features and cold silver eyes. His armor was black and polished to a mirror shine. He smiled often, but the smile never reached his eyes. He demanded the princess be returned immediately. During the meeting, Thalric looked at Danny the way a person might look at a stain on the floor. "It is interesting," he said, "that humans think they can involve themselves in Dominion affairs. You are fragile little beings playing at civilization." The room tensed. Captain Hines put a hand on the table. But Danny just met Thalric's eyes and said nothing. He did not need to. His silence said everything. Vaylith, watching from across the table, felt something warm spread through her chest. It was unfamiliar. She did not have a word for it yet. That night, Danny sat on the observation deck. The stars were the same as always, endless and uncaring. Vaylith came and sat beside him. They did not talk for a long time. They just sat together in the quiet, and somehow that was enough. Danny was tired. His guard was down. He looked at her, at the way the starlight caught in her silver hair, at the strength in her jaw, at the softness she hid from everyone else. And he whispered something he did not mean to say out loud. "I wish I could marry her." The words hung in the air like smoke. Danny froze. He had forgotten that the Athrani had sharper hearing than humans. Vaylith turned to him. Her expression was unreadable at first. Then, slowly, like a sunrise breaking over one of Athrenor's violet oceans, she smiled. It was the first time he had ever seen her smile. "Then let us begin our journey," she said. Danny stared at her. His heart was hammering so hard he was sure she could hear that too. "What?" she explained. In Athrani tradition, there was an ancient law called the Right of Valthar. If someone declared their intent to bond with a promised royal, the existing betrothal could be challenged. The challenger had to pass 3 trials. If they succeeded, the old claim was broken. If they failed, the consequences were severe. "No one outside the Athrani has ever attempted it," Vaylith said. "It is dangerous. The trials are designed to break you. You could die." Danny looked at her. She was giving him every reason to say no. She was waiting for him to be smart, to be safe, to walk away. "When do we start?" he said. Vaylith's smile grew, and this time it reached her eyes. For the first time in her life, she understood why the universe had led her to that broken ship in the asteroid field. It was not a punishment. It was a door, and this strange, stubborn, impossible human had walked right through it. The news traveled across the galaxy like a fire through dry grass. A human had invoked the right of Valthar. A human, one of those short-lived, soft-skinned creatures from that small blue planet at the edge of nowhere, had dared to challenge an Athrani war commander for the hand of a princess. Half the galaxy laughed. The other half leaned forward to watch. Danny Cole did not feel brave as the shuttle descended toward Athrenor. He felt sick. The planet filled the viewport like a jewel, all violet and silver and shining crystal. 3 suns hung in the sky, casting overlapping shadows that made everything look like a dream. Cities rose from the surface in impossible towers, connected by bridges of light. Oceans glowed beneath clouds that moved in slow, deliberate patterns, as if even the weather obeyed the Dominion. Kale sat beside him and let out a low whistle. "So, that is where your future in-laws live." "Shut up, Kale. My last girlfriend's parents had a nice house in Ohio." This is a bit of a step up. Captain Hines and Ambassador Beckett were with them. Hines wore her dress uniform and her war face. Beckett carried a datapad and the calm of someone who had stared down empires before. They were a small group. 4 humans on a planet of billions of beings who considered them insects. They landed at the base of the Sovereign's Palace, a structure so tall that Danny could not see the top. Guards in white crystal armor lined the pathway. They were all taller than Danny by at least a head. None of them hid their contempt. High Sovereign Osirin Sorin received them in a great hall that seemed to be carved from a single piece of pale stone. He sat on a throne that floated above the ground, his robes falling around him like liquid shadow. He was old. Not in the way humans were old, with wrinkles and bent backs. He was old in the way mountains were old. Like time had simply decided to flow around him, rather than through him. His eyes were the same pale moons as LeHFY's, but there was no warmth in them. "You are the human," he said, looking at Danny the way a scientist might look at a sample under glass. "Yes, sir," Danny said. "You understand that no being outside the Athrani has ever attempted the rite of Valthar." "I understand." "You understand that you will likely die." "I understand that too." The Sovereign studied him for a long, uncomfortable moment. Then he waved one hand. "Very well, the law is the law. The rite will proceed." LeHFY found Danny that evening in the quarters they had been given. A small room by Athrani standards that was still bigger than Danny's entire family home. She sat with him and told him about the 3 trials. The first is the trial of mind. The elders will put you inside a psychic illusion. It will show you your worst fears, your deepest pain. It is designed to break your will. Most Athrani challengers spend years preparing for it. "I have had about 3 days," Danny said. The second is the trial of body. Falric will choose a champion to fight you. There are no weapons allowed, only your hands. The Athrani champion will be bigger, faster, and stronger than you. "So a normal Tuesday," Danny said. LeHFY did not laugh, but the corner of her mouth moved. The third is the trial of heart. No one knows what it will be until it happens. It changes for every challenger. It is the one that no one can prepare for. Danny nodded slowly. "Okay, Danny." She said his name carefully, like she was holding something fragile. "If you want to stop, I will not blame you. I will not think less of you. You have already done more for me than anyone in my life." Her skin was smooth and cool, and her fingers were longer than his. "I am not stopping," he said. "Not for anything." The trial of mind came first. They took Danny into a dark chamber beneath the palace. The elders, 6 ancient Athrani with clouded eyes, sat in a circle around him. They placed their hands on the floor, and the room disappeared. Danny found himself standing in the fields of Briar's Reach. But the sky was on fire. The crops were burning. He ran toward his mother's house and found it in ashes. He heard screaming and turned to see the starward horizon falling from the sky, breaking apart as it fell. He saw Kale's face in a viewport, banging on the glass. He saw LeHFY turning away from him, her eyes cold, her voice saying, "You were never enough." The fear hit him like a wall of water. It filled his lungs, his eyes, his thoughts. Every doubt he had ever had about himself came roaring up from the dark places where he kept them hidden. "You are just a farm kid. You are nobody. You do not belong here. You will fail, and everyone you love will pay for it." The Athrani elders pushed harder. Their psychic construct was ancient and powerful, designed to find the cracks in a mind and tear them wide open. It worked on Athrani by overwhelming their logic, their discipline, their carefully ordered thoughts. But Danny's mind was not ordered. Danny's mind was human. Human thoughts were messy. They jumped. They contradicted themselves. They held fear and hope in the same hand and somehow kept walking. The construct tried to find the center of his sphere, the core it could collapse, and it could not, because there was no center. Danny's fear was everywhere, tangled up with his love and his stubbornness, and his stupid, unshakable belief that things could get better. He did not master his fear. He did not push it away. He let it wash over him, and he kept standing. He thought about Kale's terrible jokes. He thought about LeHFY's smile, the one she had given him on the observation deck. He held on to those things like a man holding onto a rope in a flood, and he refused to let go. The illusion shattered. Danny was on his knees in the dark chamber, gasping, shaking, covered in sweat. The elders sat in stunned silence. One of them, the oldest, spoke in a voice like dry leaves. He broke the construct, not with strength, with chaos. The trial of body came the next day, in a great amphitheater open to the sky. Thousands of HFY filled the galleries, watching with cold curiosity. Danny stood in the center of the arena, feeling very small. LeHFY sat in a place of honor and smiled his empty smile. He had chosen his champion well. LeHFY was a soldier built like a wall, nearly 7 feet tall, with arms thick as tree trunks and fists that looked like they could crack stone. He stepped into the arena and looked at Danny the way a cat looks at a mouse. The fight began, and LeHFY hit Danny so hard that Danny saw stars. He flew backward, hit the ground, and tasted blood. The crowd murmured. Some of them laughed. Danny got up. LeHFY hit him again, harder. Danny went down. His ribs screamed, his vision blurred. Danny got up. This was the thing about humans that the galaxy did not understand. Humans were not the strongest. They were not the fastest. They were not the smartest. But they were the species that looked death in the face and said, "Not today." They were the species that had survived ice ages and plagues and wars and the emptiness of space, not because they were built for it, but because they simply refused to stop. LeHFY hit Danny 5 more times. Danny went down 5 more times, and 5 more times he stood back up. Each time slower, each time bloodier, each time with the same look in his eyes. The crowd stopped laughing. Danny could not match LeHFY's power, so he stopped trying. He dodged, he ducked, he moved in ways that were ugly and graceless, but impossible to predict. He grabbed sand from the arena floor and threw it. He feinted left and went right. He fought dirty and scrappy and human, and LeHFY, trained in centuries of disciplined combat, could not adapt. And Danny waited, because humans were endurance predators. They were built to keep going long after everything else stopped. LeHFY was faster and stronger, but his body was not made for this kind of long, grinding fight. Slowly, 1 minute at a time, the HFY champion began to tire. Danny saw it. A slight drop in LeHFY's guard. A fraction of a second where his hands were too low. Danny put everything he had left into one punch. It was not pretty. It was not elegant. But it landed clean on LeHFY's jaw, and the giant HFY stumbled, fell to one knee, and did not get up. The amphitheater was silent. Then Kale's voice rang out from the stands, loud and clear and full of joy. "That is my boy." Captain Hines allowed herself a small, tight smile. LeHFY pressed her hands together in her lap and let out a breath she had been holding for what felt like her entire life. Danny stood in the center of the arena, bleeding from a dozen places, one eye swollen shut, his ribs cracked, his hands shaking. He looked up at LeHFY and did not look away. That night, LeHFY came to Danny's quarters. He did not threaten. He offered. "Withdraw," he said. "I will give humanity a trade agreement worth more than your entire colony's output. Your people will prosper. You will be a hero." No, Danny said. Thalric's mask slipped just for a moment. You cannot win the trial of heart. You do not even know what it is, Danny said. Probably not, Danny said. But I will be there, and I will try. If you continue, Thalric said, his voice dropping low, I will make your species suffer for this. It may take 100 years, 1,000, but I will make you pay. Danny looked at him with calm, tired eyes. You can threaten my species all you want, he said. We have been threatened by everything. Plagues, ice ages, ourselves. We are still here. And tomorrow, I will still be standing. Thalric left without another word. Danny sat on the edge of his bed, alone, hurting in places he did not know he had. He closed his eyes and thought about Valeth's hand in his. He thought about red dirt and the smell of rain. He thought about the stars, endless and waiting. Tomorrow, he would still be standing. The great amphitheater was full. Every seat, every balcony, every floating gallery was packed with Athrani, who had come to witness something that had never happened before. The 3 sons of Athranor hung low in the sky, casting the arena in shades of gold and violet. The air hummed with tension, thick enough to taste. Danny Cole stood in the center of it all, alone. He was still bruised from the trial of body. His left eye was still swollen, though the Athrani healers had done what they could. His ribs were wrapped tight. His hands, the same hands that had treated Valeth's wounds on that broken ship, were trembling slightly at his sides. He closed them into fists, not in anger, but to hold himself together. The trial of heart had been revealed that morning. An elder had come to his quarters and explained it in a voice that carried no emotion. The challenger must stand before the court and speak the truth of his heart. Every word would be felt by the psychically sensitive Athrani in the chamber. There could be no lies, no performance, no hiding. If a single false note was detected, the trial was failed. Kale had looked at Danny and said, So you just have to be honest? You do that all the time. You are the worst liar I have ever met. But Danny understood what the Athrani did not expect him to understand. This trial was not about honesty. It was about vulnerability. The Athrani believed that all beings wore masks, that total openness was impossible. The trial was designed to prove the challenger unworthy by exposing the gap between what they said and what they felt. Now he stood in the arena, and the silence pressed against him from all sides. The High Sovereign sat above, his face unreadable. Beside him sat Valeth, dressed in ceremonial silver, her hands folded in her lap. She was not allowed to speak or react, but her eyes were fixed on Danny, and in them he could see everything she could not say. Thalric Voss sat in his place of honor, his arms crossed, his expression certain. He had no doubt the human would fail. No creature this young, this small, this mortal could lay itself bare before an entire civilization and survive. The heart, Thalric believed, was always a locked room. Danny took a breath. Then he spoke. He did not raise his voice. He did not try to sound brave or wise or important. He spoke the way he talked to Kale in the mess hall, the way he talked to his mother on the porch, the way he talked to Valeth in the quiet of the hydroponics garden. I grew up on a colony called Briar's Reach, he said. It is not a famous place. It is not a powerful place. It is just a little world with red dirt and big storms, and people who work hard and love each other the best they can. My mother raised me alone. She taught me to fix machines and grow things, and look people in the eye when I talked to them. The Athrani in the galleries shifted. They could feel his emotions radiating outward like heat from a fire. The images he described came with them, not as illusions, but as feelings. The smell of bread, the sound of thunder, the rough warmth of a mother's hands. I joined the fleet because I felt like something out here was calling me. I did not know what it was. I just knew I had to go. I spent 4 years looking at stars and wondering if I was ever going to find it. He paused. His voice was steady, but only because he was holding it that way with everything he had. Then we got a distress signal, and I walked onto a wrecked ship and found a woman sitting on the floor, bleeding, holding a knife, ready to fight the whole universe by herself. And she looked at me like I was the least important thing in the room, and I thought she was the most incredible person I had ever seen. The chamber was still. The elders, ancient beings who had lived for thousands upon thousands of years, were leaning forward. The emotional resonance coming from this human was unlike anything they had experienced. HFY feelings were deep and controlled, like still water. Human feelings were something else entirely. They crashed and surged and contradicted themselves. They were messy and raw and overwhelming, and they were completely, impossibly real. "I am not a warrior," Danny said. "I think you all figured that out yesterday." A few sounds came from the galleries that might have been laughter. "I am not a diplomat. I am not a prince. I do not have a bloodline that stretches back 10,000 years. I am just a farm kid from a small colony who happened to fall in love with someone extraordinary." He looked up at LeHFY. She was sitting perfectly still, but tears were running down her violet cheeks. She did not wipe them away. "I do not know if I deserve her," Danny said. "I probably do not. She is smarter than me. She is stronger than me. She has survived things that would have broken me. But that is the thing about humans. We do not love because we deserve to. We love because we cannot help it. And then we spend the rest of our lives trying to be worthy of it." His voice cracked on the last word, and he let it. He did not try to fix it. He stood there with all his cracks showing, in front of a civilization that valued perfection, and he let them see every imperfect, fragile, stubborn piece of him. "I am scared," he said. "I am scared of not being enough. I am scared of the distance between our worlds. I am scared of all the ways this could go wrong. But I am here, and I am not leaving. Because that is what love is to us. It is not a contract, or a strategy, or a bloodline arrangement. It is a choice you make every single day, even when it is hard, especially when it is hard." He stopped. He had nothing left. He stood in the center of the amphitheater with his heart laid out on the ground in front of him, open and beating and defenseless. Silence held the chamber like a hand. The oldest elder closed his eyes. When he opened them, there was something in them that Danny had never seen in an HFY face before. It was wonder. "In 10,000 years of the right," the elder said, "no challenger has ever made this court feel what we have felt today." He turned to the High Sovereign. Osern sat motionless on his throne. The ancient ruler's face was carved from stone, but his eyes were bright. And if anyone had been close enough, they would have seen his hands gripping the arms of the throne until his knuckles turned white. "The trial of heart is past," Osern said. The amphitheater erupted. A roar of voices, some outraged, some amazed, some caught between the two. In the stands, Kale jumped to his feet and shouted so loud that 3 HFY near him covered their ears. Captain Hines closed her eyes and let out a breath that she had been holding for 3 days. But the noise was cut short by a sound like breaking glass. Thalric Voss was on his feet, his face twisted in a rage that stripped away every mask he had ever worn. "This is a corruption," he shouted, "a perversion of our traditions. I will not accept this. I challenge the human to a death duel, here and now." The chamber went cold. A death duel outside the rite was a violation of every law the Dominion held sacred. Thalric had just shown his hand to the entire civilization. LeHFY stood. She stepped forward to the edge of the royal balcony, and when she spoke, her voice carried across the amphitheater like a bell. "I accuse Thalric Voss of ordering the sabotage of my transport. I accuse him of the murder of my personal guard. I accuse him of conspiring to blame humanity for my death, and using it as a pretext for war. This contains communications between Thalric and the saboteurs. It contains the testimony of a surviving guard who was hidden and protected by servants loyal to me. I have carried this evidence in silence, waiting for this moment, because I knew that only here before the full court would the truth be heard. The amphitheater erupted again, but this time in shock. Thalric looked at Velith, and for the first time, there was fear in his silver eyes. He had underestimated her. He had seen her as a prize to be won, a piece to be moved, and he had never once considered that she was playing her own game the entire time. Thalric moved fast. He lunged toward the royal balcony, reaching for Velith. The guards were slow. The crowd gasped. Danny was already moving. He had been beaten, broken, and exhausted. His body was running on nothing but willpower and whatever humans ran on when everything else was gone. But he threw himself between Thalric and Velith with a speed that surprised even him. Thalric struck him. The blow landed on Danny's chest with the force of a battering ram, and Danny felt something inside him crack. Pain exploded through his body like lightning. His vision went white. He did not fall. He stood there, bleeding from the mouth, his legs shaking, his broken body held up by nothing but the sheer, stupid, beautiful refusal to go down. He looked Thalric in the eye, and in that moment, the war commander saw something that broke him more than any weapon could. He saw a creature that could not be stopped, not by pain, not by fear, not by the weight of an empire. He saw something that the Aethrani, for all their thousands of years of civilization, had forgotten was possible. He saw someone willing to die for something that mattered more than survival. The Sovereign's guard arrived and seized Thalric. He was dragged away, still shouting, still raging, but the rage had turned hollow. Everyone in the amphitheater had seen the truth, and no amount of anger could put the mask back on. Danny felt Velith's hands on his shoulders. She was saying his name. Her voice was the last thing he heard before the world tilted sideways and everything went dark. When he woke up, he was in a bed made of something softer than anything he had ever touched. The room was white and gold, and light came in through windows that looked out over a violet sea. Velith was sitting beside him, holding his hand. She had not moved in 14 hours. "You are an idiot," she said softly, "but I am your idiot." She squeezed his hand and smiled through her tears, and for a moment, the whole galaxy was just the two of them and the sound of waves outside the window. The days that followed changed the shape of the galaxy. Thalric Voss was tried before the full court of the Aethrani Dominion. The evidence Velith had gathered was thorough and devastating. Communications, financial records, the testimony of a guard named Senar, who had survived the attack on the royal transport by hiding in a sealed compartment for 3 days. Thalric tried to defend himself. He spoke of duty, of Aethrani strength, of the danger of allowing lesser species to pollute the bloodline. The court listened, and then the court judged. He was stripped of his titles, his command, and his honor. He was exiled to the outer reaches of the Dominion, to a frozen moon where the suns never rose above the horizon. As they led him away, he looked back once at Danny, who was standing in the gallery with his arm in a sling and bandages wrapped around his chest. Thalric's eyes held hatred, but beneath the hatred there was something else. He still could not understand how he had lost to something so small. Thalric's faction splintered without him. The revelation that internal Aethrani politics had nearly caused an interstellar war forced the Dominion to confront truths it had been avoiding for centuries. There were hard conversations in the crystal halls of the palace, the kind that ancient civilizations do not like to have. Conversations about arrogance and corruption and the price of believing you are better than everyone else. High Sovereign Ozern Sorin summoned Danny for a private audience 1 week after the trial. Danny went alone, which was either brave or stupid. Probably both. The Sovereign's private chambers were at the very top of the palace, a room with walls made entirely of glass that looked out in every direction. From here you can see the crystal cities, the violet oceans, the curve of the planet itself. Ozern stood with his back to Danny, looking out at his world. "Sit," he said. Danny sat. "I have ruled this dominion for 6,000 years, Ozern said. "I have watched species rise and fall across this galaxy like waves on a shore. Most of them burn bright for a moment, and then they are gone. They are forgotten." He turned to look at Danny. "Humans are different." "How so?" Danny asked. "You burn," Ozern said, "and you burn and you burn, and you refuse to stop burning. I have watched your species for 200 years now, since you first stumbled out of your own solar system in ships held together with hope and metal. Every other species in the galaxy looked at the void and calculated the risks. Humans looked at the void and jumped." He sat down across from Danny. Up close, the Sovereign looked tired. Not in his body, which would probably last another 6,000 years. In the place where the weight of decisions lived. "I am not happy about this," Ozren said plainly. "You are asking me to accept that my daughter, a princess of the most ancient bloodline in the galaxy, has chosen a creature who will be dead in 60 years. Danny did not flinch. "I know. You know the pain that will cause her? When your hair turns gray and your body fails and she has barely aged at all? When she holds your hand at the end and watches you leave her behind?" "Yes," Danny said. His voice was quiet but firm. "I have thought about that. I have thought about it every night since this started. And if she decides that the time we have is not worth the pain of losing it, I will accept that. But I will not be the one to walk away." Ozren studied him for a long time. Then he said something that Danny did not expect. "My wife died 900 years ago. She was not killed. She was not sick. She simply reached the end of her time. She was young, by our standards. Only 4,000 years." He paused. "I would have given every remaining year of my life for one more day with her." The room was very quiet. "Time is not what makes love valuable, human," Ozren said. "It is what you do with the time you are given." He stood. "You have my blessing, conditionally. You will carry the weight of 2 civilizations on your shoulders. If you break my daughter's heart, there will be no place in this galaxy or any other where you can hide from me." Danny nodded. "Understood, sir." "Good. Now get out of my chambers. You are bleeding on my floor." Danny looked down. His bandage had come loose, and a small spot of red had appeared on the white stone. "Sorry about that." "Humans," Ozren muttered as Danny left. But there was something in his voice that might have been the smallest trace of fondness. Danny found LeHFY in the crystal gardens of the palace. They were beautiful, filled with plants that glowed in soft colors, and trees whose leaves sang when the wind blew through them. She was standing by a fountain that flowed upward instead of down, watching the water rise into the air and dissolve into mist. "Your father gave us his blessing," Danny said. "I know," she said. "He told me this morning. He also threatened to chase me across the galaxy if I hurt you." "He told me that too." They stood together by the impossible fountain, and Danny took her hand. Her cool violet fingers closed around his rough, calloused ones. 2 species, 2 worlds, 2 entirely different ways of being alive, connected by something that neither science nor politics could explain. "I spent my whole life being told what I was," LeHFY said. "A princess, a political asset, a symbol. Everyone who looked at me saw a title. You are the first person who ever just saw me. You terrify me, you know that?" "Good," she said. "You should be a little afraid of me. I plan to spend the rest of my life trying to keep up with you." You will fail, she said, but I will enjoy watching you try. Ambassador Beckett negotiated a new diplomatic agreement between Earth and the Athrani Dominion in the weeks that followed. It was not a treaty born from politics or military advantage. It was born from something far stranger and far more powerful. The fact that a farm kid from a small colony had walked into the oldest empire in the galaxy and refused to leave until he had won the right to love the woman he loved. The other galactic powers took notice. The Valhari Confederation, the Syndicate of Or, the Free Worlds Alliance. They had all written humanity off as a footnote, a young species that would fade like all the others. Now they watched as this tiny, fragile, stubborn civilization stood shoulder to shoulder with the Athrani, not because they had conquered anything, but because they had earned something. Respect. Captain Hines filed her mission report with Earth Command. In the final notes, she wrote, "Crew member fell in love with alien royalty. Somehow this resolved a potential interstellar war. Recommending no disciplinary action at this time." Kale threw Danny what he called a bachelor party, which involved smuggling a bottle of Athrani star wine onto the starward horizon. The star wine turned out to be roughly 40 times stronger than anything humans had ever made. 3 crew members had to be carried to the medical bay. Kale himself was found the next morning sleeping on top of Gerald the lemon tree, singing a song that he later claimed to have no memory of. The bonding ceremony took place on Athronor, under the light of 3 suns. It blended Athrani and human traditions in ways that had never been attempted before. LeHFY wore a crown of living light that shifted colors with her emotions. Danny wore his dress uniform, pressed and clean for possibly the first time in its existence, with a small sprig of wild sage pinned to his chest. His mother had sent it from Briar's Reach, packed carefully in a sealed container and shipped across 100 light-years of space. It still smelled like home. The vows were spoken in both languages. Danny stumbled over the Athrani words, and LeHFY smiled every time he did. The elders who had judged his trials stood as witnesses. Captain Hines stood at attention. Kale cried, which he would deny for the rest of his natural life. Afterward, there was a feast. Humans and Athrani sat together at the same tables, eating food from both worlds, talking in broken sentences and hand gestures and laughter. It was awkward and clumsy and completely imperfect, and it was the most beautiful thing Danny had ever seen. That night, as the 3 suns set over the violet ocean and the sky turned a color that human language did not have a word for, Danny and LeHFY stood on a balcony overlooking the world. Tomorrow they would return to the starward horizon. Tomorrow, the work of building a bridge between 2 civilizations would begin in earnest. There would be challenges and doubts and moments when the distance between their worlds felt too great. But tonight, there was just this. The 2 of them, the sky, and the future stretching out before them like an ocean with no shore. "Where should we go?" LeHFY asked. Danny looked at her. She was standing in the fading light, her silver hair moving like water, her pale eyes reflecting the last glow of the suns. She was fierce and gentle, and ancient and new. Out of all the beings in the galaxy, she had chosen the farm kid from Briar's Reach. He smiled. Everywhere. LeHFY took his hand. Her fingers laced through his, violet and pale against brown and rough. 2 different kinds of skin, holding on to each other like they would never let go. "Then let us begin our journey," she said. And together they walked toward the stars. Danny Cole stood alone on the observation deck of the starward horizon, his forehead resting against the cold glass. The stars outside were scattered like dust across black cloth, stretching out in every direction with no end. He had been staring at them for almost an hour now, thinking about home, about the red dirt fields of Briar's Reach, about his mother standing on the porch, waving at him the day he left to join the fleet. She had not cried, but he had seen her chin shaking. That was 4 years ago. 4 years of empty space, recycled air, and the quiet hum of engines that never stopped. Danny had joined because he thought the universe was calling him somewhere. He just did not know where. Most days, he still did not know. He was 29 years old. He was a lieutenant, which sounded important, but mostly meant he followed orders and filled out reports. He was not special. He was just a farm kid from a small colony who happened to be good at staying calm when things went wrong. The intercom crackled. Captain Laura Hines' voice came through, sharp and clear like it always was. All senior crew to the bridge, now. Danny pushed himself off the glass and walked. He found Cale Drenner already there, leaning against the navigation console with his arms crossed and a lazy grin on his face. Cale was Danny's best friend, his fellow lieutenant, and the best pilot on the ship. He was also the most annoying person Danny had ever met, and Danny liked him more than almost anyone. "What do you think it is?" Cale asked. "No idea," Danny said. Captain Hines stood at the center of the bridge with her hands behind her back. She was a tall woman with short gray hair and eyes that could cut through steel. She did not waste time. "We picked up a distress signal," she said. "It is coming from inside Athrani space." Everyone knew about the Athrani. The Athrani Dominion was one of the oldest and most powerful empires in the galaxy. They had been building cities in the stars when humans were still learning to make fire. They were taller than humans, stronger, faster, and they lived for thousands of years. They also thought humans were barely worth noticing. Crossing into their space without permission was the kind of thing that could start a war. "The signal is weak," Hines continued. "It is coming from a damaged vessel near the Kelvari asteroid field. It is a royal transport." "Royal?" Cale said, his grin gone now. "Royal," Hines repeated. She looked around the bridge at her crew. "I know the risks, I know what the regulations say, but someone out there is dying, and we are the only ship close enough to help. So I am asking for volunteers." Danny stepped forward before he even thought about it. Cale sighed and stepped forward too. "Someone has to keep you alive," Cale muttered. They took a shuttle across the border, with a small squad of 4. The crossing felt like holding your breath and walking through a door you were not supposed to open. Danny sat in the back of the shuttle, checking his gear, keeping his hands steady. They found the Athrani transport, drifting slowly through the asteroid field. It was a beautiful ship, or it had been. Now it was torn open along one side, leaking light and air into the void. Scorch marks ran across the hull. This was not an accident. Someone had attacked this ship on purpose. They docked and went inside. The corridors were dark and filled with smoke. Danny moved through them with his weapon raised, his boots crunching on broken glass and twisted metal. They found bodies. Athrani soldiers in ceremonial armor, all of them dead. Whatever hit this ship, these soldiers had given everything to stop it. At the end of the main corridor, behind a sealed door that Danny had to force open with a crowbar, they found her. She was sitting on the floor with her back against the wall, holding a blade in one hand and pressing her other hand against a wound in her side. Her skin was a soft violet color, and her hair was silver-streaked and moved like liquid, even though there was no wind. Her eyes were pale, like 2 small moons, and they burned with fury when she saw Danny. "Stay back," she said, in accented but clear human language. "I will kill you." Danny lowered his weapon slowly. He held up his empty hands. "We got your distress signal," he said. "We are here to help." "I did not call for human help," she said. "Well, human help is what showed up," Danny said. He knelt down in front of her, calm and steady, and looked at her wound. She was losing blood, or whatever the Athrani equivalent was, a slow glowing liquid that seeped between her fingers. "I need to treat that," he said. "Can I?" She stared at him. He could see her weighing her options. She was a princess of the most powerful empire in the galaxy, and she was sitting on the floor of a wrecked ship, bleeding, surrounded by the bodies of her protectors, being offered help by a species she had been taught to look down on. She lowered the blade. Danny worked quickly. He cleaned the wound, applied a field dressing, and gave her a mild painkiller from his kit. His hands were steady the whole time. He did not stare at her strange beauty. He did not ask stupid questions. He just worked, the same way he used to work on the farm when an animal was hurt. Calm, patient, focused. "Why?" she asked, as he finished tying off the bandage. "Why what? Why did you cross into Dominion space for a stranger?" Her pale moon eyes were searching his face, looking for something she could not find. He shrugged. "Because you needed help," he said. "That is enough." She said nothing. Danny picked her up carefully and carried her through the ruined corridors back to the shuttle. She was lighter than he expected, or maybe he was stronger than he thought. Kale raised his eyebrows when he saw her, but said nothing, which might have been the first time in his life he kept his mouth shut. They brought her back to the starward horizon. Captain Hines took one look at the injured Athrani princess, and understood immediately the size of the storm they had just walked into. But she did not hesitate. She ordered the medical team to treat the princess, and told the crew to prepare for whatever came next. Danny stood in the corridor outside the medical bay, talking to Kale about nothing in particular, laughing quietly about something stupid. He did not know that inside, the princess was watching him through the glass window of the medbay door. He did not know that she was studying the way he smiled, the way he laughed so easily, the way he had touched her wound with hands that were rough but gentle. Valith Sorin, youngest daughter of the High Sovereign of the Athrani Dominion, whispered a phrase in her native tongue. It did not translate perfectly into human language, but the closest meaning was this: "What strange creatures these humans are." She did not look away from him for a long time.